I've always been a collector of antiques. They've always interested me, and I've never really been interested in selling them because a lot of them have sentimental value to me. However, one day something happened that put me off collecting for a while. The day started as normal. I got out of bed and made myself some coffee. However, I figured, why not go out to an auction today? Get myself another antique. And so I did, later that afternoon. So when I got there was a heap of antiques for sale. So it was kind of a yard day for me. However, there was one that stood out to me in particular. It was a old antique doll. It looks like it could have been from the 1970s or the 1980s. So I looked how much it was, and it was extremely cheap. I figured, well, if there's an antique for sale for this price, I may as well get it. I am never going collecting with that mentality ever again. So I bought the doll, and I took it home, and I put it on the shelf with the rest of my collection. Now, funny thing was, when I went to sleep and woke up the next day, the doll wasn't on the shelf. It was sitting on the floor in front of my bed. It spooked me when I got out of bed, but I picked it up and put it back on the shelf. The day continued as normal, but when I went to go to bed that night, the doll still wasn't on the shelf. It was on the floor in the exact same spot I found it that morning. So I picked it up again and put it back on the shelf. Then that morning, the doll wasn't on the shelf or on the floor. It was sitting at the end of my bed, at my feet. When I had opened my eyes, it had spooked me terribly. Now I was suspecting something, so I picked it up and put it back on the shelf. And I looked around to see if anyone was hiding. But I found nothing and no one. I went off to work, and when I returned that day, things around the house were misplaced. There were records everywhere. There was furniture moved around. And again, the doll was on my bed. I was highly suspicious at this point. I struggled to go to sleep that night because my mind was racing at what could have been happening. When I woke up that morning, the doll was sitting on my chest, right up in my face. This was the scariest bit of all. Spooked me so much that I grabbed the doll by the head and threw it across the room. I realized that it was the doll then, and I went to check on it. It only sustained a crack on the face, but I was concerned about what other damage it might have sustained. I polished it up and put it back on the shelf. That night, I woke up to the sound of one of my own records, so I went to the living room to check. As I walked down the hallway, I could hear,
"Life could be a dream if I could take you up in paradise up above. If you would tell me I'm the only one that you love."
But as I got closer, it got slower and more distorted.
Life could be a dream if I could take you up in paradise up above.
But my heart sank when I finally got to the living room and I saw the doll standing there next to my record player, turning the crank slowly but surely.
Life could be a dream if I could take you up in paradise up above.
Until eventually it just started playing the bit "The Only One That You Love" over and over and over again in different speeds and pitches.
The only one that you love.
The only one that you love. The only one that you love.
The only one that you love. The only one that you love.
Until eventually it moved right in front of me, jumped on me, and went. I screamed in terror, took the doll's head, and smashed it against the table. However, it only sustained a few more cracks in the head. I did it 2 more times until it managed to break free with its nearly broken face. It turned its head to look me straight in the eyes, and then it said in a demonic, nearly whispering voice, "You take me home, and then you just put me on a shelf, left there to rot with the other artifacts that you've collected." The doll leapt at me and tried to hurt me, but I grabbed it just in time. After a struggle, I managed to force its head onto the table, crushing it. Some sort of strange blue vapor left the doll's head when it was crushed. As it went up in the air through the roof, I could hear it lightly whispering, "Thank you." Still have a collection to this day, but only of things I know can't move. However, I'm still concerned about them getting possessed like that doll.